Let's talk about the maximize lifetime spending strategy. This strategy is specifically designed for users that have no interest in leaving a liquid estate behind. You want to develop a plan that maximizes your lifetime and retirement spending, develops an optimal withdrawal strategy that triggers the least amount of taxes that ultimately allows you to spend the most amount of money. My name's Zach, and in this video, we're going to cover Optiml's maximize lifetime spending strategy. Like all plans in Optiml, the maximize lifetime spending strategy will first look at what you've input as your desired after-tax expenses for each year. Whether you're growing your after-tax expenses by a fixed growth rate or using the go-go, slow-go, no-go simulation, it will first ensure that you have your required after-tax expenses each year, and then it will calculate and maximize on what your surplus spending is and develop that optimal strategy that maximizes your lifetime spending. So when you're in Optiml and you're selecting the maximize lifetime spending strategy, you have the ability to set your surplus spending window. So as this strategy is designed to melt down your liquid investments and leave nothing behind at the end of the plan, you might not necessarily want to surplus spend if you're still working and still accumulating. So you have the ability to set the age where you want to see surplus spending calculated in your plan. Now what the surplus spending does is it builds on top of your base expenses. So on the expenses page, you've input how much money you need in after-tax dollars to live the lifestyle that you want to live. So throughout the plan, it's always going to ensure that you have that baseline. And then what the surplus spending window does is it calculates and tells you just how much more you can spend in after-tax dollars to ensure you're not going to run out of money and you're not leaving that large estate behind. Now you also have the flexibility to set your surplus spending window to your current age all the way to the final year of the plan. And what this will do will tell you exactly how much money you can spend in after-tax dollars to every single year of your financial plan. Once you've set your surplus spending window, click Optimize to begin running your financial plan. Once your plan is complete, it'll land on the plan summary page, showing you exactly what's left in your pre-tax and after-tax estate. Now this is a great example case where it's literally drawn everything down to $0 by the end of my plan. But the key metric to look at for the maximize lifetime spending is, of course, how much money was I able to spend throughout my financial plan. So if you're now going back and changing different variables like retirement age or purchasing a particular asset throughout the plan, this of course will affect your lifetime spending, so this is the metric you want to look at closely. As you navigate down the page, it's going to show you exactly what surplus spending is in any given year. So we can see what the base expenses was and what was calculated of how much more I can spend in any given year throughout my surplus spending window. Now you can also click on the expenses page. This is going to show you exactly when your surplus spending window starts, when it stops, and how your expenses are changing over time. So in the example here, we're starting it the following year. So in year one, I'm just spending exactly what I said I need in after-tax dollars. Once my surplus spending window's kicked in, it's showing me exactly how much more I can spend and the total amount of after-tax dollars. So I can scroll across just to see how that's changing year over year, and we can then get to the point where my surplus spending window stops, and then we just drop back down to my required after-tax expenses for the remainder of the plan, and we know it also didn't leave any money behind in any of my liquid investments. It's drained everything down to zero by the end of the plan. Now in this particular example, my pre-tax and after-tax estate got down to exactly $0. There was nothing left in liquid or physical assets. But now let's review a case where you've kept some physical assets such as your primary residence. So now we can see in this example there is a pre-tax and after-tax estate value. And you're thinking to yourself, well, you've ran a max spend strategy. The goal is to draw down my estate down to $0. The key factor here is Optiml never simulates selling any physical assets such as any real estate, unless you simulate telling it to do so. So here I've kept my primary residence for the estate, so I can see my liquid investments got down to $0, and I can still see what my primary residence is worth at the end of the plan. Now in this next example, I've simulated selling my primary residence, however I'm still seeing a pre-tax and after-tax estate value left at the end of my financial plan, and I'm thinking, well, why is that? So the answer to this comes down to the timing of when I'm selling my primary residence in relation to my surplus spending window. So as I navigate on my investments page, I can click on real estate and I can see exactly when I'm timing selling my primary residence in the year 2050 in this example. Now when I go back to my expenses page just to review exactly when my surplus spending window starts and stops, I can see that in 2050 I still have 3 years left of my surplus spending window. So as there's only 3 years left of my surplus spending window, Optiml's algorithm will intuitively raise your surplus spending in proportion to what your living expenses are. So it's not just going to suddenly tell you should spend $400,000 for the next 3 years of your surplus spending window. It's going to increase and slightly decrease your surplus spending in relation to your living expenses. Another example would be if you're selling your primary residence in the final year of your surplus spending window, it's not just going to tell you can spend an additional $1 million in that year. It's always going to smooth out your surplus spending amounts in relation to your overall financial plan. So let's review an example of how we can resolve this to ensure that you're draining down your liquid investments to $0 at the end of the plan. First recommended update would be to edit your current plan, navigate back to the maximize lifetime spending strategy, and what we can do is extend our surplus spending window. So as the example we saw, it's stopping with 3 years left after I sold my primary residence and it's leaving an estate behind. So what I can do is extend my surplus spending window. Now in this example, let's just extend it to the final year and run a new plan to see the results. The new plan's run, we can see we get down to $0 in the pre and post after tax estate. If your goal is not to leave an estate behind, but rather build out a retirement plan that maximizes your lifetime spending, then this strategy is for you.